Welcome to the New Media Show. Here we are. It's Wednesday again. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Todd. How are things in your world up
Uh,
there in Michigan
it's going.
still?
It's going good. We had
Okay.
thunderstorms come through this morning, and it was, I was worried about if it was going to last. So, if
Yeah.
they're saying this more this afternoon, so if it comes back, we may get bumped off the air because
Uh,
I am, what you want to say, beholden
line of
to
sight.
Starlink.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Uh,
And been doing just a whole bunch of optimizing and so just been having fun with some stuff. I had to, for those of you that are on the audio stream, if you're listening because we're lit and live or live and lit, whichever way I'm supposed to say that, I'm using a
right.
new streaming software for the Mac. I had to, my last PC, except for the TriCaster, got shipped to Oregon for one of our new interns. So I had to basically one of my older Macs I had to put in place here and find because I was running a Windows streaming software. And so anyway, but doesn't matter. We're live. It all sounds and looks the same
Yeah.
to everyone. But
The
it,
audience shouldn't tell a big difference, right? Yeah.
nah, shouldn't tell a big difference at all. But I will also say that just kind of on a side note, we've one of the weaknesses that we've had at Blueberry with our AI system um, was the models had not updated the image capability for a while, and we they made Gen 1 of ChatGPT Image Maker available, and it's like day and night. The biggest complaint I had on the entire platform was the image generator because it was just bleh, it was horrible,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's just absolutely fantastic. So I'm pretty pleased.
Yeah.
It's just if you're not happy with stuff, you just wait 2 weeks and or a month or two, and they'll fix it. But a lot of stuff happened this past week.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's certainly true.
I
Oh.
entitled my show episode YouTube Doubles Down on Podcasting.
Well, and I titled mine YouTube. Um, what was it? A YouTube. Let's see here.
I know
What the?
I hear the audience screaming already.
Oh, it says YouTube is not getting enough video to maintain a smooth stream. So it
Oh,
may be something going on. But the title that I put on was YouTube is changing, but not dominating podcasting. So, all right.
yeah, that'll happen from time to time when the weather might be just a little rough here. So
Yeah.
hopefully, yeah, the stream looks good. It's just not giving them 5 megs a second here. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's what's going on. But what they've done is this: the CEO Neil Mohan
Mm-hmm.
in Cairns told people that were at a private meeting,
Mm.
people don't want to just listen; they want to watch. And I'm like, oh, tell us something new.
Well, Todd, I think he's a little biased. What do you think?
Yeah, I think just a little. Um, it's not all want to watch. As a matter of
Right.
fact, we had some feedback from some of the audience members that said, we got a boost of 20,000 sat saying YouTube is not podcast last week. And, so there was some commentary that came in from the show and even some stuff that showed up on Twitter. Matter of fact, Rob, you kind of got poked at a little bit in Twitter.
That's right. I
They,
expect that.
they said,
Yeah,
oh,
that's all
Rob's
right.
back. In all fairness, if you didn't listen to last week's show completely, Rob really wasn't gone. He just was taking care of his dad. And I didn't
Right.
realize he was off.
Right.
Um, but you got an email from them that says they're going to start dubbing. What is this dubbing thing?
Well, they actually announced this coming capability many months ago. I think it's been a long time ago. I think the CEO tends to put out things that are coming in the far future, and that's kind of what's happened here. It's called automatic dubbing on your channel, which means that YouTube will automatically generate translated audio tracks in different languages, making your content accessible to more viewers. So those that want to get your content, my content spoken in English, they'll translate it into I don't know how many different languages, but if a user is coming into YouTube consuming content based on the settings that they have to access certain language content, they will get access to my show or my content in their local language.
That's pretty compelling.
Yeah, so I don't know how I'm going to sound in Chinese or how I'm going to sound in different languages around the world, but is it going to be exactly in my voice cadence, or is it going to be something different? I don't know what the experience is going to be on this. I'm interested to hear what that is, or is it my voice being replicated by AI in a different language? If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Cloned into a different language. I don't know the details on this, but the email did say that no action is needed. We'll enable this on your channel in the next coming weeks, it says. So it's not fully rolled out yet, but once it's enabled, it's a little bit of a two-way street situation here. I mean, if you think about it, that means that all the content that's being put out in other languages around the world will also be translated into English and made available in the English side too. So, it may boost your audience numbers or your views, but it also means potentially more competition too, right?
So that is going to be it's going to be interesting to see how well they've done this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty. I would say it's pretty cool. Now, I didn't get that email. I got some email from them that said, "Hey, we want you to start building your community over here." And I'm like, "But you have to do it on your mobile app. You can't do it on your desktop. You have to do completely mobile building via your phone." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." So, all right. Well, we will continue to do audio and video, but. Yeah, it is kind of it's interesting because he spoke after that blog post came out, and I wonder if this affected if he read that blog post and replied and reacted to that. That's my wonder, But one thing that I was, anyway, it is what it is, but I'll be honest with you, what really irritated me was Spotify. So,
what's new on the irritation front
Spotify? Okay, so Spotify, oh my God, we're going to have transcripts for shows.
Oh, yeah.
And for Spotify creators, we're going to give you a transcript, and we're going to publish that using the Podcasting 2.0 transcript tag. We're good up to this point. We're all good.
Right.
Up to this point. But
there's always a but with Spotify, isn't there?
They're not going to take my transcript from my transcript tag because I'm not on Spotify for creators, and they're not going to allow my transcript to be utilized on their platform. Now,
so if you're using this tag in your RSS feed, they're not going to support external use.
They're going to support
these tags.
They're going to support it internal and external going out for their creators. But when my audio goes in, they're not going to take mine.
Yeah.
According to James in his article said, but will Spotify support ingestion of creator transcripts the other way?
Right.
In the standard RSS feed from any podcast company? No.
Well,
that answer is a no. Not at this time. No time frame. So, what a bunch of you know, okay, we're gonna play because guess what? Apple put this in place. See, Apple supported the transcript. Now they had to match.
Yep.
And it's going to, Spotify podcasters have to enable this, but
Right.
yet you're not going to allow my transcript to come into your platform. So, call me surprised.
Yeah, there always has to be a catch with Spotify.
Yeah, call me shocked. Aw. So, it's nice that they did this. I thought it would be a cold day in where before they adopted the tag. But, that's, it had been big news. They would have got kudos from a lot of people had they ingested the transcript tag. Maybe they thought, oh, no one's doing that. But hey, I've had a bunch of calls following the podcast show, and I had an interesting one. I don't know if I can say who. Probably can't. I just talking about radio stations outside of the United States. So the individual that I was talking to works with a lot of radio stations in Brazil and lots of foreign speaking radio stations. Mm-hmm. And he said that they're about 7 to 8 years behind in podcast adoption as compared to the United States.
7 to 8 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They don't know what to do. They're streaming, they're all streaming, of course. So they have their radio stations up on stream. And now, they're, his company's doing some things and they're like, well, we don't understand this whole podcasting thing and why we should do that. And so, we kind of talked about that for a bit and some of the things they're doing. But it's not that case in many other, in Australia, I think they're way ahead. But the BBC obviously is, right, to an extent, have been for years. Obviously here in the United States, NPR and the others have done this for years. But I will, I get to thinking about it a little bit. How many radio stations in the United States actually have podcast content? And I don't think I have a number on that.
Yeah, it's been one of those things that's been very much a controversial topic in the broadcast radio industry for a long time, and I know we've talked about that over many, many years.
But they're stripping out ads, stripping out the music, and then they're trying to, put this together I think most radio people are used to, that top 40 song or whatever being played. So how does it change? You can't go into FM 100's not going to work. Just paying the rock station.
No, it's a different medium entirely. Yeah. So you can't really cross these things over.
No. Morning.
That's why a lot of these big radio networks went out and bought podcasting companies.
Yeah.
It's because they didn't have any people inside of the radio network that had expertise in it and understood how the content was different. They always took the radio model and tried to apply it to podcasting, and it never worked.
How many stations or how many podcasts did Sirius XM set up? Because they have a lot of stations that are like, okay, so they've got Stern, they've got a variety of channels that are just talk, news. How many of those did they actually, and some of those are not quote unquote, like they're not going to take Fox News on Sirius XM and create podcasts for it because they don't own, Fox pays to be on Sirius XM, I'm sure.
It's a distribution deal.
Yeah, but I wonder how many actual Sirius podcasts there really are that Sirius owns, what that total number is.
Oh, the ones, well, I I don't know that they have many that are considered to be like owned and operated. That's the terminology to describe it. And then there's shows that they have a content kind of
Yeah.
royalty licensing agreement with to do on their platform. There's the XM satellite and Sirius satellite network, and then there's Pandora, and there's lots of ways that that company can work
Yeah.
deals with content, and that's kind of how to think about it. Is that a lot of um, podcasters have worked with like Simplecast
Yeah. Yeah.
and the and actually the Stitcher platform really is only recently kind of faded away.
Mm.
They shut down the app quite a few
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
but a lot of the content deals that were done while that app was running still persist, but they're slowly getting phased out.
The book of knowledge says, based on information available, there's no single precise number of how many serious podcasts they own. The company
Hmm.
approach involves, as you said, a mix of direct ownership, exclusive deals, and other podcast networks and individual shows.
Yeah,
So
they
they had,
sell ads too.
yeah, and they just got another exclusive deal, and I had it linked up here. Who was it that someone that the company that actually we should not notify? I have it in my other notes. I wonder if I can find it here. Yeah, there was just one that left. Um, excuse me, left Spotify.
Ah,
Spotify lost. Let's see if I can find it.
I've been hearing
Trevor. Yeah, Trevor Noah's What's Now moved from
Oh, Trevor Noah.
yeah, moved from Spotify to Sirius. So his $4 million a year talk show will be a Sirius XM podcast. So there again, you've got a situation where, again, it's just kind of this hybrid. So again, I just would be curious how many Sirius actually own and produce, or maybe none.
I think that they have some, but they're probably um, deals that are done with existing content creators. So they may provide some producers and things like that to help the production of a show that they have a deep relationship with.
Yeah,
That is maybe simulcast on satellite radio, and then maybe also made available through Pandora and in a more comprehensive distribution deal. So yeah, that's probably how they currently do it, and then they add on top of that support to sell ads. I know a couple of shows that have recently left the Stitcher Sirius XM platform because they weren't getting a lot of support from them, and so they wanted a better type of a relationship. But I have also heard increasingly in the industry that Art19 is becoming a little bit more favored by larger creators now, and it may have been a while since you've heard that name.
yeah, it's been a
Art19.
while.
Yeah, they are owned by Amazon, so they're part of that kind of like that Wondery, Amazon,
Yep.
Amazon podcasting platform kind of deal.
So are they pulling them into Amazon in exclusive, or?
Well, my understanding is that recently Art19 did a little bit more of like a relationship inside of Amazon around Amazon ads. So there's a deeper partnership that's being established between Art19, Wondery, and Amazon ads. So it's making that platform appear to be, I guess, better. It has the whole programmatic advertising capability built into the platform too. That's doing a good job, I guess. But it's yeah, I think it's an up and coming platform that I think we're going to see bigger creators kind of shifting over to more, just because of the team over there and how good the team is that's over there. I've worked with a lot of the guys that built Art19 for many years, back when I was even working at Podcast One. So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of good guys over there, and I enjoy their involvement in podcasting, but they have been a little quiet.
There's it's no secret that SoundStack takes care of our programmatic.
Yeah.
And everybody and their brother has been reaching out to me saying, well, how much are they filling? And I'm like, yeah, we've shared a little bit of that information that, it's about an 80% fill rate. And that's kind of the way it is in most programmatic. So, well, we'd love to monetize the rest of it, and fill the rest of that 20%. And I'm like, okay, so, and there's like
like a waterfall type.
Yeah, and there's like 5 people that want, into this, and I'm just like thinking, yeah, this can get real complicated here. And what I basically said is like, okay, we got 80% fill with SoundStack, and you want the rest. So if there's 1,000 downloads per episode, and there's 200 that are unadvertised, you're going to take that 200. Now, are you only going to fill 80% of the 200, or are you going to fill 10%, or are you going to fill 100? Because I'm not doing any development. Because you think about it, I got an 80, so I'm essentially going to be doing a whole bunch of development for 20% of the remaining. And it's good for our podcasters, but I want some guarantees. I'm like, I want 100% fill. If you want that 20%, you got to fill every last download. Well, we don't know if we can do that.
I don't know of any programmatic platform that's much over 80, maybe 85%.
So if
on their fill.
Yeah, SoundStack does 80, and it varies,
It's going to vary a lot.
Yeah, and it does by show. Some shows are even a little less. Some shows are more. And I'm then like, okay, so I'm going to give you this, whatever that number is. And then I'm going to do a bunch of dev work, maybe a month's worth of work. Just, it's off my head. Everything takes a month. If I think it's going to take a week, it's going to take a month. And then, what does that really mean? And what's the experience? How long before someone clicks play?
Right.
Or, it's not really affecting those that are downloading, the media, because that just kind of happens behind the scenes. But if someone clicks play, and then SoundStack has a chance to get it, and then company ABC gets a chance to get it, and if they say no, then it comes back to me. How many seconds, may not be a lot, but it could be enough for a listener to say, what's going on?
You're talking about latency?
The latency, how long does it take? Because people kind of expect, and they click play, and they want it to start reasonably fast.
I wouldn't expect it. If it was architected correctly, there shouldn't be any additional latency. Because that opening is known prior to the request coming in. So it shouldn't, it's just a matter of getting plugged into like a couple of other buying platforms that can fill those. And then there's another layer and adding in the host read sales, the pre-recorded host read sales that can be funneled into those insertion slots as well.
It's mostly pre-roll. So
right. So that's the strategy to fill out 100% is to look at it holistically and
waterfall it.
Yeah, exactly. Pull in your host reads that are dynamically inserted.
But we've got some requirements. You got to give us the log files in the format we want them. Number one,
mm-hmm.
You got to feed back the log files, or, and there is no or. We want the log files, and we need them in a timely manner. We don't need them delivered 2 days from now. We need them within an hour. We need a continual flow of log files coming in. And, and then we have to go and make sure that your standard that your CDN is delivering is the same thing with us, because we know how we're measuring. So there's a whole bunch of variables. And when I start bringing that up to people, they're kind of, well, we'll just provide you reporting. I'm like, no, it's not how it's going to work, because there's going to be I can see, as an example, let's say I send 1,000, let's say SoundStack delivered me 800 deliveries, and we deliver 200. When I come back to the report I get at the end of the month, I do an accounting. I do I do an alignment because what I want to make sure, I trust SoundStat, but we do an automated accounting that says, okay, the spreadsheet says, the report we got back says that on this episode, we're paying you for 800 deliveries. So I'm kind of the gatekeeper. I'm making sure the podcaster's not getting screwed. And I know that they're not going to screw us, but I want to make sure if they delivered 800 ads, we get paid for 800 ads. And if we delivered 200 without, then we know because but the accounting comes later. So, this is where when you tell people that, they kind of look at you like, you do an accounting on our accounting? Yes.
You also have to make sure that you're counting it under the same methodology.
Right.
The platform that's delivering you the ads.
Because but again, if they've delivered 800 ads on that episode, that report better show 800 ad deliveries. Now it's going to vary on what the CPMs are. So, yeah. Anyway, it's an interesting time.
Is it impressions or is it deliveries, Todd?
No, it's deliveries. It's always deliveries.
Deliveries is something different than impressions.
Okay, when they put an ad, that's an delivery impression. It's the same thing.
Okay, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. When they deliver, they put an ad in it. That's one or two ads. Then we get the count.
Yeah, it's a loaded distinction because a delivery doesn't imply it actually got listened to, right?
Right.
But an impression implies that it was listened to.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to have those terminology distinctions.
Yeah, and having those eggs on eggs conversations. So,
Right.
So the Apollo Fiction Podcast app is, I guess, shutting down. To be honest with you, I never heard of it. So probably the reason they shut down. This is an issue. We have it's a crowded field out there, but it kind of makes me giggle a little bit on this next story. Not against Apollo, but the next story. Do you remember the domain I used to have, Rob?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I wanted to comment on the Apollo.
Oh, go ahead.
Because there's a deeper story there about that. And it's not so much about them specifically. It's just that model that they were playing around with of being a fiction-based podcast listening app, right? There's been speculation in the industry for many years, and I got pulled into it a few times over the years, talking about how we would see the rise of genre-based consumption apps.
Right.
Right. So you would have like a sports app, and the ESPN platform is a good example of that, right? That's been successful. But in other genres, like true crime, maybe that there was a true crime, listening app, which I guess fiction could fall under that, but really not. But that same kind of idea, right, would find a place out there, right? This may tell us that, no one genre of content can actually support its own consumption app.
I think there's a distinction, though, and I don't know enough about the app to even talk to it. But did all the shows on that app have a common goal? And hey, listen to the show on the Apollo Fiction Podcast app. Were all the shows that were on there part of a collective that were working towards a single goal? And saying, hey, we're all part of this fiction podcast app over at Apollo, and telling the audience to go listen? Or did Apollo just aggregate? And again, maybe someone can tell us, did they just aggregate a bunch of shows and did a wish and a prayer?
I think that's probably most likely, that they just aggregated a bunch of the fiction podcasts into one app, and it just failed to find traction.
Well, that
all those podcasts were able to be found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all these other bigger platforms.
If you don't have the entire team of shows all saying, hey, listen on the Apollo Fiction Podcast app, and promoting it and being the central location to have community and everything else, it don't work.
I don't think it would work. the more I think about it now and the landscape of podcasting today, I'm not sure that that kind of an app would reach scale.
It,
I just
the
don't see it.
the only way it works is if you have a community of shows that are working together. So
Maybe.
yeah,
Yeah.
and again, it doesn't necessarily have to be an app, but it's as an example. And I've been
Yeah,
playing around with a couple of things.
but Todd, as a content creator, would you want to emphasize the promotion of a very niche app, or in your widely distributed podcast, to drive them to one niche app when there's probably not that many users over there?
Again, what was the agreement? And maybe it was one mention a week or one,
Yeah,
yeah, you don't know.
yeah. It's a.
There
I think
has
it's a tough hill to climb.
And I think ultimately what ends up having to happen is you have to have a community that wants to promote a destination. You have to, like when we were doing tech podcasts in the early days, everyone was talking about tech podcasts, and we had a lot of traffic to the website. And obviously the amount of apps were quite different than it is now. But at the same time, we had this collectively working together. And I think that is the potential today. If you have 10 or 12 shows that are working together, and if they have a place where people can come together, and not necessarily be the primary, but maybe it's a place to make donations, maybe a place to engage with the community. There is potential there, but you just can't have just an app.
Right. Yeah, I fully agree with that, Todd. I think there has to be some sort of value add.
Yeah. There has to be something that makes people want to go there.
Right.
And some of the stuff that Adam and he and Dave are doing, or they definitely have this community of churches and community, and that kind of works, right? And it really depends on the group.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's very, very hard.
Yeah, I don't think that most podcast listeners probably would even think to bounce around to different apps to consume different.
I don't think so.
Shows.
No,
Right.
unless there's a reason.
Right.
Unless there's a
Unless
really
you're
big reason.
Part of a community.
Yep.
If there's some sort of premium
Yep.
content model that's linked up with it, then that's starting to ride other trends that are going on in the podcasting space, which are, I think, much more productive. Just putting out an app with a group of shows is not going to work.
That are not working together is not going to work.
And it's even beyond that. It's just there needs to be functionality in the app that makes it more valuable for them to do that.
Yeah, I believe so too.
Yeah, because people consume a variety of different shows. I think the last research came out said that a good percentage of podcast listeners consume up to like 5 or 6 different podcasts. So what if the other 4 shows are in Apple Podcasts?
Yep.
Are you gonna?
Yeah.
So what's the motivator to go over and use a niche app?
I had someone that just sent me an email that basically said, I'm done using this specific app. I'm leaving. I'm going to a different app. And I'm like, well, okay, fine. And I asked I found out which app it is. I'm not going to burn them here on the show. But it was interesting that the listener emailed me and said, we're moving to a different app. And I'm like, okay. And didn't ask for my suggestions, because I would have gave them a couple of Podcasting 2.0 suggestions, but they said, we're going here. I'm like, okay, good job, whatever you want to do. So anyway, moving on to another topic. Rob, do you remember when I owned CNNpodcast.com?
Yes.
Matter of fact, let's see if that goes anywhere right now.
I would imagine that they're using it.
CNN, especially since their latest update.
Yeah, because for most of the lifespan,
it's not. It's my God, it's not going anywhere. What a bunch of idiots.
They probably don't even know that they own it.
Probably not.
So for most of the life of CNN's podcast, they've gone under the name of CNN Audio.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why that happened is that CNN Audio was a radio thing for many years, and that was their kind of like their way to straddle the fence of sorts on their distribution.
Yep.
So, on the streaming radio side with like a tune in, and then podcasting on this side, they could just throw it up under that umbrella now. So
Yeah, they
I
don't
guess
have.
now they feel empowered to add the term podcast because maybe it's going to include video again too, and they can build on top of that.
For those of you that don't know, I own CNN podcasts for at least 12 years. Cochrane News Network podcast is what I was. That was except I pointed it towards Geek News Central. Had I had a CNNpodcast.com, I still probably would have lost it.
Yeah.
But
Trademark.
They basically
would have gotten you.
Yeah, they basically sent me an email and said, "Hey, we'd like it transferred back to you." And I sent an email, so why don't you? I've had this for like X number of years. Is it?
Thank you for holding on to it. Todd,
and how about $500? Man, as soon as I mentioned money, the lawyers are like, "You have 10 days."
All right.
So in spite, I waited like 9 days and 20 hours or something before I initiated transfer.
Don't you try it.
Yeah.
And extort us.
Chris and I ran into each other. I don't know.
Oh.
And him and I were laughing.
Right?
Yeah, him and I were laughing about it. And, we laughed about it about a year afterwards, too. There's no hard feelings because, he just kind of got stuck.
He was caught in the middle of it.
Yeah, he got stuck because of legal. Legal told him, he asked for money, so you can't speak to him anymore. We're gonna get him, So I figured it wasn't worth the battle. And anyone that's out there, msnbcpodcast.com is going to be available in a few days. I've had that domain for 20 years, and I finally didn't renew it. So msnbcpodcast.com, they never came and got it. So if anyone wants it, I didn't want to spend $11.99.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, me neither. I've gotten rid of probably 30 domains this year that were just junk. Trying to save on revenue. Here we go again. Here's the story. Podcast growth firm. Are they a growth firm? Bumper argues that relying on download counts subject to logarithmic changes can mislead publishers and recommend using its own analytics dashboard instead. So, going to blast on downloads, but we have a better solution. We're more smarter than everyone else that's been doing this for 20 years. Come over and use our dashboard. We've got the better measurement because downloads are decreasing for podcasts, yet downloads are largely disconnected from actual podcast consumption. Hold on. Let me repeat that again, Rob. So put your calculus or basic math to this. Okay. Downloads are decreasing. Okay. So, all right. I don't agree with that. Let's say you have 1,000 downloads, yet downloads are largely disconnected from actual podcast consumption. So they're basically saying that, yeah, we know that some people that download a podcast don't consume it. So technically, the number should be lower.
So I think that discrepancy has gotten less over the years because of the changes Apple's made.
Right. But we're doing it better. And so what I'd love to see from Bumper is if I say I have 1,000 downloads, what does your dashboard say? It's 1,200, 1,300 listens, 1,400 listens. And if you do, I'm not saying this is the case, but if you're saying that's the case, then
I don't see how they would know a better number, Todd. I don't think it's really technically possible.
Therein lies my thing. So here's what they do. I'm going to bring this up on the screen, see if I can find the right number. They have all-time verified listeners. Oh, okay, how do they verify that? All-time playbacks, all-time listen and watch time. Okay, how do they do that? And all-time downloads. So
unless they can get access to your log files, I don't know how they can make sure that this is accurate.
yeah, how do they know? So they've got Apple playback, Spotify playback. Oh, they're using the Apple podcast, Spotify plays, and YouTube views to come up with their playback. All right.
So they're missing a big chunk.
Big chunk.
Well, I don't know how big it is, but it's a chunk of data that makes the data that here not as accurate.
Right. So they got listen and watch time from Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and then they show the download numbers.
I mean, what about Overcast and Pocket Cast?
All that's gone.
All these platforms,
The 40%
is not included in these numbers.
The 30% or so that's not included in these numbers.
Right.
So
of course the numbers are decreasing because the numbers are always less.
So anyway,
compared to the real number. So if you were to compare your number to his number, your number is going to be higher, Todd. There's no question.
It should be, according to
I would. I mean,
so what
there's some inflation happening.
So what he's saying here is, all right. So now it's remember what you wish for situation,
right?
So now you're just taking money out of people's pockets. Why would a podcaster ever subscribe to this data for reporting to an advertiser when the standard is the download? That's what we're going to bill them. Are you saying going to use the bumper data to bill your advertisers? No.
The question that you have to ask, Todd, is are the advertisers using this as a way to gauge the scale and size of a podcast that they're looking to sponsor or advertise on?
Yeah, well,
that's the real question that I'm worried about.
So James says, we've seen significantly higher plays in YouTube since tweaking your headliner template to add captions and chapter points. Okay, so that's fair. But, he really doesn't have too much other to say than that. But anyway, he says
he could get data potentially from YouTube. I know a couple of companies that are getting views data out of YouTube. They do have an API, but you have to have this kind of special permission to get access to it. But it's possible.
Yeah.
But nobody knows what the counting methodology is for YouTube.
And maybe they have a special in with Spotify too to get that data, or they're scraping or something.
That is true, because I know a couple platforms that have that relationship with Spotify too.
Yeah.
So they're few and far between, though.
That's right. I agree. But anyway, I just thought this was interesting. No one likes smaller numbers. To be frank,
but it's a number, Todd, that you can tout publicly to say that downloads are declining.
Yeah.
Even though the whole premise of your platform will create a smaller download number.
So, and yeah, I agree. But one thing I will say is Pocket Casts, they've adopted the pod roll. James now has a tracker on Pod News that shows who's being recommended who. And of course, all the early guys, me, New Media, this show, all the early Podcast 2 adopters are, very high in the ranking charts. And I'm sure that's going to piss a lot of people off, and they are going to, try to figure out now how to, what did I do on this show? I recommended Geek News Central. On Geek News Central, I recommended New Media Show. On Podcast Insider, I recommended Geek News Central and the New Media Show. So, I have control of 3-4 shows. So, of course, I cross-link them. And, so we got some artificial bump. But again, it's about recommendations. It's recommendations we're making. And we can add any show we want to our pod roll. So I think that the pod roll piece, the tracking James is doing, is not a, how big my numbers are type of conversation. I wanted to use a different word there. It's really about if you're a podcaster and you have the ability to recommend 4 or 5 shows that you listen to, or 6, you should add those to your pod roll, because those are your personal recommendations to your listeners of content you think they should listen to. Should I and Geek News Central really be promoting the new media show? Yeah, probably that's not a show my listeners are going to listen to. So I'm kind of breaking the rules too. I should be like linking to No Agenda and the other shows that I listen to. So I think
it's also generally true that podcasts about podcasting don't have big audiences.
Yeah, that's true too.
That's a reality of the market.
But I find it I kind of giggle every once in a while. All these companies, we handle private and paid RSS feeds now. I'm like, we've done that for a long time. We never got no news when we offered up private and premium podcast feeds. Well, we did it on premium because of Apple Podcast. But I'm like, I guess that's a big deal now that they offer that. I don't even know who Metacast is. I should probably look. Who is Metacast? Are they another podcast host? Let me load it.
I believe so, yeah.
Metacast.
Oh,
is it XAS or let's look here. Oh, it's Metacast. Yeah.
Metacast.
It's a podcast app. Huh. They're not
it's
even
a listening app?
Yeah, turn podcast into knowledge. Oh. So this changes so what exactly did they do? They added, see, now I've got I can't flip screens here.
Okay, it now supports private and paid RSS feeds.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
It's auto creating transcripts, summaries, and chapters. Says Pocket Cast has adopted Podroll creators' recommendations alongside services.
I don't want
Blueberry and Transistor. Right.
Well, because I don't want any company creating chapters. I've got my chapters already set. I've got my transcript already set. I don't want an app coming in and doing this. So
it's like what Spotify is doing with the transcript.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Hopefully they're honoring people that have chapter files and have transcripts. It's not clear in the article if they have. So
yeah, Todd, it's this move towards any kind of open tag, right? That's available. Some of these platforms are going to look at and go, "Oh, that's a good idea. I'm just going to build it into my platform."
Right. Well, they should take the metadata that we're providing.
Right, they should, but
yeah. And if they want to create something,
nothing new from them.
Yeah.
Right.
If they want to create something for shows that don't have this, because Libsyn and a whole bunch of others don't have any of these features.
Right.
I think that's good. So, but I guess the Infinite Dial is coming out in Australia here. Their report's coming out either today or tomorrow. Probably, yes, says tomorrow, so it must be it already happened. I didn't hear anything about that. There was an experiment done, and I think Ted's probably going to roll his eyes here a little bit. Pocket Cast pulls new episodes in under 90 seconds versus 10 to 18 minutes for Apple. Does it really matter that it's 10 minutes? Of course, by the number of tickets we get, oh my God. We track the top five issues podcasters are having, and we talk about it every Monday. People submit it, they hit publish, and they immediately go to Apple, and it's not there. They go to Spotify, it's not there, and they immediately come back within 2 minutes. We can see the published time of their episode, and the ticket creation is about 2.5 to 3 minutes in between, and they say, "Why isn't my podcast on Apple Podcasts?"
Right.
It's in the top 5 every week. Every
People
week.
think it should be instantaneous.
Instantaneous.
Right.
So, Ted, and
That's been a problem for years.
but they think it's supposed to be instantaneous. So, I guess James has a point here that, Pocket Cast picks it up in 90 seconds, but still, it would be within that window. Someone's going to go to Pocket Cast and load their, maybe they'll have it, but it's just amazing to us how many tickets. Think about that. Top 5 tickets every week because it hasn't shown up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So maybe, Ted, that's maybe, help us out with our tickets. Let's support Podping.
Yeah. Well, that would be a solution to that problem. I agree with
But
that.
still, it's going to be 90 seconds to 2 minutes regardless.
Oh, yeah. I mean, probably even longer.
But what's amazing is the number of repeat tickets where we have to tell a podcaster 2 and 3 times.
It's like, it's not here. It's been 5 minutes. It's not here. It's
Right.
10 minutes.
Yeah, well,
It's
how
not
come
here.
it's
15
not
minutes.
there? You're ruining my launch. I'm supposed to be out at 9 p.m. and how come it's not out at 9? And
I'm going to move my hosting.
and they just go off.
I know. I'm going to move my hosting because you're not.
Yeah, you're too
not publishing it
slow.
fast enough.
Right? What's your problem?
Right.
My God, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well,
I booked myself for a call at the top of the hour.
Oh,
because
so
we were going to stick to.
we're going to stick to an hour, so we got 9 minutes, 8 minutes. So that's good. So we got through. I made the list today. What do you guys think of the agenda today? You know how I did.
Anybody saying anything or anybody saying?
Yeah, people are actually on. I got pretty good views on. You get pretty good on YouTube, Facebook. Here's how I did it today. I took all of the sources and I put it in the chat BT and I said, find me the 10 top topics, but give me 20. And then I went through and I picked 8 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So all this is news you already read, but you just got to hear our personal commentary about it.
Right.
So we'll try to
try doing Grok at some point.
And have it right
set
naughty.
It to their kind of aggressive mode or whatever it is, or their comedy mode.
Comedy mode. Well, yeah. ChatGPT already knows I don't like certain platforms, and do you really want to talk about this company? So.
Right, yeah.
All right, so we get everybody here on time because Rob has a call. Rob, how do they reach you?
It can be found on X at Rob Greenlee, like has been the case for many years. Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube at Rob Greenlee. It's all under my name. So go check it out. And if you want to reach out, you can send an email to me, rob.greenlee@gmail.com.
And I'm Todd at blueberry.com, at Geek News on X, on Mastodon, at Geek News, at geeknews.chat. Also, I just want to say, I know that we have a pretty big audience in Israel. So, I know there's lots of craziness going on there right now. So we hope you stay safe. And anyone in that region as well. Just thought I'd mention it because I know we have a number of listeners that hail from that part of the world. Yep. So other than that, we'll be back. I think you're off next week, right, Rob? You got something going on? I saw that you had X-nayed out of the...
Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to be in New York City that day.
All right. I will be solo
okay.
for the next show then. And then we'll be back in my other location the following week. So... we may have to move the time again. So see if that works for you, Rob, and
okay.
We'll go from there. All right, everyone. Thank you for